Okay, so on stage I have with me Wolfgang Richter, who's partner DWF. Wolfgang's main focus is fintech, in particular initial coin offerings, blockchain and cryptocurrency structures. I also have with me Pilar Santamaria, Innovation VP and CTO for EMEA at Dell, and Barry Child, Research Director, Distributed Ledger, Cyber and Cryptocurrency Technology, Applied Innovation and Strategic Investments at HSBC. Please join me in welcoming my panelists. Wolfgang, I'd like to start with you because we've just been talking about regulation. Is regulation an impediment, or are you seeing the technology, the commercial applications expanding at such a rapid rate that it's just going to move ahead?
They will expand such rapidly that regulation is not a problem. What we are actually saying to our clients is that basically every business model that makes sense and has blockchain elements to it, token elements to it, will be able to execute through all kinds of regulatory solutions. There are different ones available. The challenge is to finding out which one to take. So usually the business model is not killed by regulation that's out there. It's rather to coming up to a decision making as to how to do that. And since it's a global approach, because mostly the products are not just going to be local ones, but global ones, you are not just considering where do I have the issuer, so the company that's issuing the tokens, but I also have to look where do I offer it. Or, you know, if we're looking at the token economy, blockchain in terms of process optimization, which was a very important part what Mary was talking about, that's a different animal, because that's, if it's not related to token, usually it's outside of regulation anyway.
Okay. The commercial opportunities, though, we talked about that, cryptocurrencies, crypto assets, well known, well publicized in the public consciousness. Trade starting to get there, but there's an enormous range of industries. Where do you see blockchain being adopted, and how quickly and how dramatic will that change be?
So we see a lot of activity across the industries, and I will categorize that in 4 groups. So one group is the machine-to-machine opportunity, which may imply payments as well. So imagine a connected car that has to fuel, has to wash, has to rent the services, or can hire you as a driver. And that decision will be taken autonomously, and thanks to blockchain, we can do these, let's say, business cases that we couldn't achieve before. Another aspect is what Mary was mentioning about the public sentiment. So it's giving back to the citizens, to the customers, their sovereignty in terms of their economy power, their data power. People want to take more control of their data. And distributed solutions like blockchain allows these use cases. So we move into the customer-to-customer economy, informal economy, or collaborative economy, which in some places like Kenya is measured to be $20 billion. So that is gaining a lot of attraction. And that can be very disruptive as well. And then we get into supply chain and logistics for efficiencies. So basically improving agility and processes, removing paperwork with different parties. So that is an area of a lot of activity because it saves costs and is easy to deploy and implement. And then transparency associated with this type of process improvement. Another area is compliance, because curiously enough, we see that blockchain needs improvements in terms of compliance for especially public blockchains. But we also see use cases of blockchain where we actually enable compliance in a way we couldn't before. So those would be my, let's say, the 4 areas that I see. Moving a little bit back, when we talk about blockchain, we talk about what is happening in the technology as a revolution, which is the distributed solutions. I don't have technology religion. I work for a company without a technology religion, but the industry has had a centralized religion. So we invested $2 billion in research, so no sales force, no investments in buying customers, no research in 3 years in these distributed solutions. in which blockchain is one of those, in order to enable to do things we couldn't do before. Transactions, remotely, real-time, autonomous decisions, all the aspects that I have just described.
Mary, HSBC is clearly a leader in terms of trade finance. One of the first most significant, publicly anyway, trades in blockchain. I think it was soybeans, wasn't it? It wasn't itself a major deal, but it was significant and more than just symbolic. How important is it for HSBC and others to start jumping on and embracing this technology?
I think, firstly, to correct you, that wasn't the first transaction. In fact, we did it ourselves, one back in 2016 that was similar, but the press got a bit carried away with that one. But in simple terms, it was an important milestone in terms of us working as an industry. We believe very firmly in digital trade, and we know that there needs to be transformation in that space. Now, this technology and other digital technologies lend themselves very well to supporting the lack of standards, the lack of systems that affect the challenges around digital trade today. And they fix a lot of these problems. So, whether it be that particular transaction or the WeTrade consortium last week, or other initiatives happening with regulators and other banks and also other members of industries, we see a drive to continuous improvement. And what we're focused on and what we've realised very quickly, it's not about the technology. We learned very early in the process, and we're 3.5 years, 4 years in now, that the technology is only one piece of the puzzle. Legal and compliance is another piece, and also the business value is another piece. And each is fairly independent but need to come together, particularly around legal and compliance issues. For example, if you're going to have, as Mary pointed out, how decisions are made, who runs the network, how you manage the network. And I use the analogy a lot of the Betamax versus VHS war from way back. You had a better technology, but you had a standard and a set of players that came together that transformed. And ultimately, the better technology lost. We'll see the same thing with DLT. There are many technologies. Yeah. There are many points of view as to what the correct answer is. But it's actually the people and the business networks and making sure you're open for business where you need to be open to business to make it convenient and available for people to do business that really counts with this technology. And it's much better to bring the whole street than it is to go on your own.
You're right, and this is the interoperability. So you need
absolutely
more than one. You need someone at the other end of the first telephone.
The technology is just enabling. If I'm brutally honest, if I look further forward, I'm paid to be an entrepreneur, so we tend to look further out there. But if you take AI, for example, organising this conference, DLT is going to actually be your business agent that's going to transact for you. So, for example, it might be at one point that we say, Alexa, organise me the conference. And then there's a set of AI that just goes and does it. And it suddenly all happens, rather than a series of business processes that happen now with armies of people involved to actually make the conference happen. And you'll see this happening with trade. You'll see this happening. It's perfectly fine for somebody in a small environment to be able to say, right, ship these bicycles to Cuba. And it just happens. That's doable now. We've never had technology that enabled that to happen before. So it's taking that new set of digital transformative technologies, applying it to the problems of the day, but particularly with what we don't do today and what we can do in the future, that really allows us to start reaching the potential of what this technology can do.
You've just worried my entire production staff there, but that's okay. We'll settle them down afterwards. How are you advising your clients? Let's look at coin offerings. And Mary talked about the extraordinary rise of price of Bitcoin, the Ethereum issues. We've got Ripple out there. So there's a number of digital currencies. How are you advising your clients? Is this a space they need to be? Are they coming to you saying, this is what we need to do?
actually, there is no doubt that this is a place to need to be. So we have to make one crucial distinction. It's between the so-called exchange tokens, like Bitcoin or Ether, that has no other function than being exchanged for something, and tokens that have a real use to it, being it a utility or being a security, that have reference, that are basically the representation of an underlying claim. You know, it could be I'm the owner, or it could be I have a licensing right, and the token is just representing that. Now, the novel thing where the regulators are so kind of trying to get their arms around is that if I'm tokenizing such a relationship, then suddenly it could be that this token later works like a currency, that it's going to get a market cap of 50 million, 100 million plus. Suddenly it's going to be on the exchanges. Do I regulate if those are actually exchanged on there? So that plays a huge importance now for everybody within the business model. And it's true for every industry. They have to look at whether in that industry a token model that brings people together makes sense. And if it makes sense, we automatically then, if the volume is sufficiently high, are entering into an exchange mode where, you know, in 10 years from now, probably nearly, you know, you can make an interchange of coins of any type at any moment with your smartphone right there. So if we talk about, because that's going to be one of the questions anyway, if we talk about how the world will change, it will tremendously change, because it will allow that business tokens that have an underlying purpose, that these are also listed on exchange, and you at any point in time you can change it against pounds, euros, or dollars, or other coins.
Well, I'm sorry, yeah, please. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to comment on that. I think that's, you know, something that's very important, but there's, for me, something even more important. Yes, I think, you know, what you comment on with the coins in exchange are one thing, but it's infancy right now. We will see central bank digital currencies, we will see bank-issued digital currencies, or if we don't, we will see some other vehicle, perhaps from technology firms or others, because there is more global business than ever today, and people need the tools to conduct global business. So the consumer will drive it. But the key thing about DLT that no one's mentioned so far, and I think is so important, is at the moment, about 40% of the world at the very maximum engage in global business. DLT has the ability, as you mentioned, to go down to that smartphone and connect that world up to allow everybody to be included and everybody to transact. And it's the power of the consumer being able to join the network to do business, which increases the business across the globe. And I think it's a challenge from that world that will also drive the world you describe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bill, you talked about that, about consumers having more power, and we've spoken previously here. Consumers can choose where their grapes come from, or if there's fair trade coffee. Using blockchain in theory, they can see where it's come along the path, what supply chain has, and that gives them power as well. Is that what you spent billions in research in the technology? Is that one of the key drivers?
Well, we need to cover the needs, so we need to focus on the value, like it was mentioned. So with the right legal partners, we can make blockchain a reality if we have the right legal partners, if we have the right technological solutions, and also if we have the right business value. So transparency is a key differentiator at the moment in the food and in the goods industry. Also for social aspects of blockchain for good, right? Social aspects, and then the machine-to-machine economy, and also for those who, we talk about customer proximity in artificial intelligence, distributed artificial intelligence, but the entities that will enable customer-to-customer interactions and would, let's say, enable those interactions will be very much disruptive if we focus around the real cases that are being deployed, because we all talk about theories, right? In blockchain, you can download so many use cases. And when we land down into the technology, and I hope I don't become too technical now,
please.
There are some examples very pragmatic, and we need to be very pragmatic. Why? Because it's the same as with analytics or artificial or big data. Many of the experiments will not progress.
Yes.
So, for example, and because it will enlighten some of the aspects we are talking about here. Yesterday, we announced internally, this is the first time that is announced externally, that we have deployed data protection for Alibaba, Amazon Web Services, and Azure clouds for those data protection policies on the data worldwide.
So this is good. You've just deployed data protection for Alibaba, Amazon,
and Azure, and Azure, Microsoft Azure.
Right, I see. Globally.
Globally, yeah.
And the technology you're using is?
It's blockchain.
Blockchain.
Yes. So basically what we can do that we couldn't do before is that these policies, when you go to IoT environments to distributed data, they were centralized, they don't scale. So we do with blockchain what we couldn't do before in a scalable way. And this was deployed in a real proof of concept just this week. Another case that we have is distributed analytics. So peer-to-peer, I can access data being compliant because I don't take personal data, I just get the insights from different legal entities. Imagine the potential of freeing up the data from different legal entities. And we audit through blockchain those peer-to-peer analytics. Very clever as a technology, we love it. But we have hobbies, right? But and another pragmatic case is the capability to register digital assets. I can register digital assets, any digital asset, and I can provide consent on that digital asset. And I can integrate that with my legacy system. Again, this is all that I'm saying is real, is deployed, okay?
It's happening now. Yeah.
It's available to access remotely, to replicate, because in blockchain I say there are many myths and things I mean, we have wonderful ideas, I mean, but this is real, deployed. And this opens the door to so many use cases, because if I can register any digital asset that will not be stored in the blockchain, but can be shared because of the integration with legacy, with the RISE business process, very much automized. This opens the doors to so many use cases, including the consent of that digital asset, and I can get into many details. I would invite you to catch up offline, because we don't keep any personal data in the blockchain. And we can remove all the personal data from the digital assets that we share. So we are very much active in the healthcare industry to facilitate patients to share data across entities. So again, with the right legal partnerships that are going to enable this. But these things are happening, and they are happening very much up to speed. I will cover maybe later on the constraints that Mary was really highlighting that are real.
Okay. Okay, very happy to take your questions, by the way, so if you are interested in asking a question, just put your hand in the air and we'll bring you over a microphone. But that data protection issue has come up several times, obviously a big push for protecting privacy, GDPR, yeah. But blockchain seems to have the ability to remove the personal data, keep the broader data that is accessible. And again, is that a piece of work that DWF's looking at?
Yes, I mean, it's an absolutely key issue, how to handle data. We have the obvious problem, Mary already said that it's difficult to forget anything on the blockchain. So we have to deal, how do we forget on the blockchain in those issues? But clearly, and also as Pilar just mentioned, the processes where individual data is transferred from one peer to the next one, we have to have very careful checks and balances on this, given the GDPR situation and all the other ones. Now, what we see, though, is a huge push, we see it out of our client base, into giving the data producer back the right to produce it, being you giving data to Facebook, or you giving data to healthcare institutions, or you giving data about your consumer buying ability, the way you search on the internet. All of those activities you're doing and you're giving value to somebody. Now, there are all kinds of business processes that are trying to move those data back into your own authority, and that you can take economically advantage of this. And the way then it's the really complex way of doing it, and interesting ways though, is how do you combine it with a token approach? So the one that gives the data receives a token, and now how do you attach value to the token? And then if the value increases, how you to handle it in the exchanges? Do you tie it to some of the, to peg it to another crypto, or you peg it to fiat? Do you peg it to a stable coin? So I could go on and on how you could handle that. But in any case, data, I think in probably 60 to 70% of our business models we're handling, and we are probably handling more than 50, are related to some kind of data protection and data handling issues.
Yeah. Banks are all over compliance. It is probably the number one issue and has been for a decade now. This must loom very large in the work you're doing with blockchain.
So there are some new things that help us in this space. So secure multi-party compute, for example, the ability to secure your data anywhere. Blockchain, DLT, shared ledger technology, you will see significant advancements in that space, add into the ability to manage your data, whatever network it's on and whoever has it, but still enforce rules like GDPR. Like us as a regulated financial institution, our focus has always been enterprise DLT, because we need to know our customer, we need to do the various controls that for AML and KYC to ensure that we know who we're working with. So we can actually, because we actually do a whole set of processes to authenticate who it is we're working with, and it's our customer, we then need to do less mining, for example, to actually prove it, because we've already proved it's them. So there are advantages straight away in enterprise DLT. The other challenges, though, with blockchain, just traditional blockchains, aside from speed and velocity and another, is the security of the information. Most put every piece of information on every node. Now, one, that has a big problem with scalability, because if you're doing one transaction a month and you've got someone doing 1 million a day, they've all got to store each other's transactions, and you're going to need to get some pretty big computers.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make it very convenient if you're just doing one fax a month at the moment to switch to something digital. So again, you have to think it through. But there are technologies already in play that only share the data to those involved in the transaction, for example, but maintain the advantages of the wider ledger. So that's good. Then we've got the threat of things like quantum computers. So the keys where we store the information and we hold it. And bear in mind that some trades in banking can be stored for up to 30 years.
Yes.
Now, if you look at the history of computing, if you're telling me that in 30 years' time, we won't be able to crack the keys of today, I'd have confidence believing we can't do that in another year, let alone in 30 years' time. So we do know that we're going to need quantum-safe mechanics. In fact, UK leads at the moment with the Quorum guys doing their quantum key delivery via satellite, that is particularly interesting, because it really solves a lot of these issues we're going to have around how we secure the data, and particularly how we distribute the data onto networks anywhere, and then maintain those regulatory controls and compliance controls, and also data residency issues as well. All of that can be incumbent within the technology. And I'll also, just to finish, if you think about ransomware, we saw with the WannaCry attacks, which were awful, all the experts in the world were put on that to try and basically break that WannaCry restriction, that ransomware, and get the hospitals back working and other. But what they basically ended up doing in most cases is paying the money, because they had a payment system that with a lock on it that no one could break, and they were able to move money. Well, ultimately that's what we want the future internet and other to be able to do, is to transfer information securely so that people can't break it and can't hack into it. So if we turn that into good uses, mix it in with the right tooling, I think you will see new internet protocols. I think you may see the next generation of IP come along. But ultimately, what we have the ability to do is to fix the challenges we have with the technology spectrum to allow that to grow even wider. So as we grow the business networks out and we become more inclusive across the globe, and we get to smart cities and other items that we're in our daily lives changing, we'll have the communications infrastructure to communicate securely, protect the consumers, and make sure everybody's able to transact as they wish in the new world.
Are they issues that you came across in your research? Capacity, scalability, storage, and then we're moving into quantum computers, which is a whole new step in technology.
Yeah, so basically our developments have focused on those areas of improvement like scalability, time to finality in order to gain consistency, and this also portability, because we are doing investments in development at the moment with no standards. So we have done a lot of improvements in this area. We are focusing on private blockchains. And private blockchains very much focus on consensus algorithm. So basically, if we get in agreement, the community, then we can add a block. And then that will be unmutable, right? That's the philosophy, explained to my grandmother. So basically, in this situation, it was quite slow to get this agreement, basically like in normal life. So what we did is an improvement in the consensus algorithm. So now we have a very high throughput in terms, and we gain time to finality. So that is a new version of this consensus, Byzantine consensus algorithm in terms of scalability and time to finality. Also, we created a protocol for smart contract portability so that it is interoperable across blockchains. And this is a big improvement in order to protect the investment. Then we are researching on interchain, because obviously because blockchain needs to be divided in small chains to be manageable and to scale. We are investing in interchain. These features that I just mentioned are available right now and for general availability in 4 months, but they are already available right now. When we also talk about privacy, we need to consider that as soon as we integrate with legacy, I can be today or you can be 007 agent, and I can have a table that...
Often made that mistake, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I can have a table that is going to match the identity with that key, but as soon as I remove that table, which is not in the blockchain I will put 007, there will not be traceability of who did a transaction. In that case, I can add or remove assets, and the only thing that will appear, and this is an option of many, okay, to really, that technology has as a possibility, I will be able to say, yes, 007 accepted this asset, but then 007 removed this asset. And as I remove that link in the legacy, in the blockchain, I will not have traceability of any personal data, which is an option. But we keep on working on these type of improvements to be compliant.
Okay. Let's open up now to questions in the audience again. Just put your hand in the air. We'll bring around a microphone. One down the back, please, if you wouldn't mind. Thanks.
Hi, my name's Tony Goodwin. I'm a recruitment entrepreneur. And I was approached recently about the way to store CVs using blockchain technology. And I must admit, most of it went over my head, but it seemed incredible. And that it might undermine LinkedIn and other job boards and so on. I just wonder if the panel's got any view as far as the technology is concerned, how it might disrupt the whole employment and recruitment industry in the way that people use their own CVs, enter their own CVs. And I was interested in what I think Mary said earlier about the information going in has got to be correct before you know that it can be validated throughout the system. So just any sort of general thoughts on my specific industry, which is quite a big one.
Okay, Barry, start with you.
Yeah, I think that's a really good example. Look, the whole issue of digital custodian is something that we need to evolve. I, like a lot of other people, have a tin with a load of documents in at home that is pretty much my whole life story, from a birth certificate all the way through, yeah? We've all got one, or it might be a safe, whatever it is. we've moved on now. If I lose that tin, how do I prove who I am or what I am? How do I show my education? Is it necessary, even at, I'm 52 years of age now, I'm giving bits of paper out that I earned as long ago when I was 15. Can you really look back to those manual records and reconcile these things? It's not great, yeah, it's very manual, it's very difficult to do. Going forward, I think there is a role to be played for people to help them with that challenge, particularly around, for example, when you do recruitment and you do things around selection, is you can have consensus to verify fact. And that can be a very powerful thing, from walking into a store and basically being asked to confirm a fact to prove who you say you are, to verifying your degree or your PhD or insurance, mortgages and other. Like we did a project recently with the HKMA in Hong Kong, obviously, and we were quite amazed that we were being shown that the land registry issues they have there would have multiple mortgages on properties where they just can't keep up with the manual records and keep things organised. These digital systems are going to have a huge impact in actually solving that problem and bringing truth and consistency to systems. And I hate to say it, but we've for a long time we've had issues, particularly in the banking industry, with trust. No one, I don't think, would argue that with the financial crisis, etc. But these systems actually make trust incumbent, and they make transparency incumbent. And I think in today's world, these things are very relevant and actually are the right tools to move forward and do business more effectively in the future.
But just to be clear, so you're saying submit CVs to blockchain.
Yep.
One of your concerns is the accuracy of those CVs. Whereas you're saying that blockchain will enable checks to happen almost automatically against employment records, degrees, qualifications.
Or at least have a level of confirmation that allows you to believe what you're reading.
Okay.
Please, yeah.
Yes. What's going to happen and make a very, very maybe distinctive vision is that you, as an applicant, put your data on the internet, so it is clear on the blockchain. It is clear that you have done it. So this is, you're tied to it, but you will control who's going to see it. So there is no intermediary anymore that actually controls who's going to see it, and it's not in an open room where everybody can look at it. You can define through smart contracts who is supposed to see it. So you have security on the one hand, who's giving the information because he's tied to it, he can't change it afterwards. And on the other hand, you as the one who gives the data can control who's going to see it. I think it's going to be a huge disruption of your industry.
Yeah. But I will add, though, it's a selection of digital technologies, not blockchain on its own, that actually create that transformation, as it is with most industries.
And because blockchain is used as the sort of overall, but there are many technologies out there.
Yes.
And there'll be a shakeout, I assume, where some will emerge as successful and others will not progress.
Yeah, well, for me it's very important to highlight that blockchain will not store the data. And there is some confusion because the protocol, even if there are improved protocols, it doesn't allow to store the data, and that is not the philosophy. Blockchain is like a vehicle to go faster and to gain agility. But we are going to have then the repositories of the data. And in this case, those CVs will be stored in a repository that will be distributed across the entities that need to verify the information across communities. And these communities can interact with each other, so we can have communities of communities. And then which are the type of technologies that will be most successful? The ones that provide enterprise class to blockchain. So when we talk about security, integration, so integration applications with legacy systems, such as Boomi or any, this type of integration is critical. The resilience of whether we go for cloud or for on-prem, those storage, how do you access simultaneously from the blockchain application, the blockchain and the storage we are seeing is very critical because the blockchain is not going to store the data. So, and that is available right now. So we are not talking about new solutions for blockchain. Blockchain is the new thing, but the enterprise class solutions around blockchain are tested and are mature. So we are very lucky that we are in this step of the process.
Okay.
Trevor Sesford, Bank of China International. Just a kind of thought that when I heard you discussing, do you think this will help drive change in the government's tax policy for people purchasing, say, from Amazon, distance selling?
Changes in tax policy, that's interesting. I read somewhere today that the Australian Tax Office is looking at taxing those who have digital assets outside of Australia. Is the taxation issue around digital assets?
Well, the taxation issue is a huge issue. We have the VAT issue in terms of all transactions going on in the consumer space. So that's kind of different, and there has been an important decision by the European Court on this. And obviously we have, if you look at ICOs, for instance, we have the whole question of income tax or corporate tax, at what point it's going to be taxed, when the money comes in, or is it a deferred income tax? We have IFRS on the one hand, and we have German GAAP, for instance, on the other hand, how they treat it. The Swiss have issued a special tax treatment. So the problem of it is it's very hard to give a specific answer, because the tokens, if you look at it, that's representing something, the token have to represent something, and then you look at the underlying, so you look through what's the underlying, and then you say, okay, how do we tax the underlying? So it depends very much what's the underlying and what the token is representing. So it's hard, it's hard to give a general answer.
But tax will be an issue in the tax.
Tax is a huge issue.
That's going to be
if I could
sure.
add one thing. Basically, if you do a business model, within your business model, you have a token model, and you say, I want investors to invest into it. You have basically three methods you can do it. You can issue a security token, you can issue a utility token, and you can issue an exchange token. And all three can economically structure that they get the same results to the investors. There are differences in between, but you can structure it, on paper, like they have the same results. Now, tax for it plays a huge role, because tax-wise, it's really very different. So tax drives a lot of those structures.
Okay. Are you finding that, Barry, that of all the issues to do with it, obviously the taxation of income assets has got to be part of the equation, and technology needs to adapt to allow that, otherwise we'll earn the ire of regulators?
Yeah, it's not an area of my expertise, so I can't really comment, but what I will say is that obviously around any financial product there is a set of rules, tax being one of them, and those things need to be addressed. But yeah, I'll play my engineer card on that.
Okay, but I bring you in, so no, tax isn't necessarily your remit as well. But is that part of the regulatory equation, that we need to be able to regulate the technology to enable transparency, compliance, governance, and possibly taxation as well, where appropriate?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not a. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm also very much not a tax expert.
Yeah.
But I think there is an issue there around the need for technology not just to be a sort of vehicle for arbitrage. So whether it's regulatory arbitrage or tax arbitrage, somehow we need a system that isn't just a sort of, quick and sneaky route away from these obligations.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. Next question, please. So, just there. Could you, Josh, just over there? Thanks.
My question is regarding private keys.
Sorry, who are you? You are?
Sorry, Mark Tweedy from Citi.
Right.
My question is specific to cryptography. I understand you have to have the public key, the private key, digital signatures and addresses. In this world where agency is reduced, disintermediation occurs more readily. In the event that there's a loss of the private key for the asset owner, how does that work? Because I heard at the beginning we're moving from digital currencies to, crypto assets effectively. So asset ownership and identify of underlying owner is critical. So the question really is, you reduce the agency, who then enables the owner to prove their identity and issue the private key?
Yeah, that's one of the big challenges with the technology, and it's how you implement it. You can implement it well, you can implement it badly, and that opens up that risk profile. There are a number of solutions across the marketplace. Like, we don't just use private keys and public keys for blockchain. We use them in everyday life all the time. And it is a key, it is a primary concern of how you manage that. Now, at scale, you use technologies such as HSMs and so on to actually store keys. But in a shared network, then do you have a central one for everyone? Do you have it individually with each people? How they stored, the recovery processes. There are many mechanisms to restore data and recover keys or create new keys. But ultimately, it comes down back to that formation of that business network and the rules and governance around that business network. That's where the answer and the control point is for actually managing things like that. And obviously the nature of the network and the transactions and payloads being carried out across it will actually dictate just the level of security and the level you will go to protect those things. But there are solutions at each level that are already understood, already implemented at scale. I'll share with you things like RSA that we've had for many years now. And we do know how to do this stuff. Like, one of the great things about this new technology is it's technologies we already know and we trust and we understand put together in different ways that enable this thing to work. There's nothing really new here. So this allows us to have more confidence in the technology because we get it. And as a result, I believe we can secure it appropriately. But it's a very key point of any solution.
Yeah.
Totally in agreement. And for example, RSA is part of the key management solution, and it's an enterprise solution that has been there for so many years. And governments keep those keys by regulation. We cannot import any encrypted enterprise solutions without the governments actually keeping those keys. So in that sense, we guarantee this compliance and security as traditionally, which is great.
Okay.
As lawyers, we are always structuring trust with the contracts. And now with the private keys, it's one of the key issues. How do we structure the trust into usage of the keys? We have the multi-sig situation. Several ones can do it. And we are actually really in early stages as to how to structure that. We, let's say, as a legal industry, I think is really beginning to finding structures how to doing that. And I think also the banking industry, because one of the huge situations, business opportunities for the banks in the future is to handle that part. Because clearly everybody, the worst thing is you're using your private key, because then everything is lost on your account. So how do you manage that? And everybody, or most of them, would be happy to having so. And one of the horrible stories is that people that are holding a lot of bitcoins are kind of personal danger, because if anybody steals their key and does something with it, they can anonymously retract the bitcoins, for instance. So how do you handle situations like this where you manage trust? And that's one of the fascinating questions. And let's say the black and white right now, as it seems like one has a private key and nobody has a private key, that's going to change, I think, radically in the future.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But you need to go wider than that, remember, with that problem, because not only is it keys around the blockchain, but it's also going to be, for example, the keys to sign on to your local web application or your mobile banking or your government relationship or whatever. There's going to be people are going to have sets of these things, and managing it is going to be a challenge.
Is this a vulnerability?
Which goes back to that digital custodian issue.
Yeah, is this a vulnerability at the moment?
But it's something that we're going to have with technology that we're going to have to manage. But we will see everybody playing a part in managing that.
Totally manageable, and I think, but also there are services that some banks are offering right now for Bitcoin users to keep the memory stick with the keys in a safety box and services like that. So we see also other type of services emerging depending on the preference of the people, right?
Yep.
So new services to ensure protection of okay, thanks. Sir. It's on, I think.
Gary Von Lemden from Citi. I'm aware of a firm that does exchanges for interest rate swaps and credit derivatives. They have a platform to trade that transparently. And I think about stocks and I think about commodities and currencies. So do you see digital, these kind of tokens being part of an exchange, and how do they organize them? Do they organize them by currencies versus intellectual property?
Yeah.
How does that work?
Well, I mean, you can start thinking that a token is just a representation of some underlying right. So anything that you see today, for instance, securitizations, anything that can also be represented by a token. So what's going to happen is that any financial product will be checked whether you can translate it into a token. And instead of having, for instance, securitized ABS, et cetera, traded, you will have traded it as a token. And it has the same properties as it has right now. So the answer to is any of those products within the next 5 to 10 years will cease to exist outside the blockchain, because everything will be handled on it. Now, if I say on blockchain, I don't mean technically, I mean it's where you have an immutable part of it. You can look at it. A lot of the data is going to be always off-chain. So we are starting to see that those financial products are tokenized, and we are starting to see, and it just happened in the last, let's say, 3 to 6 months, that institutional investors are looking at the space, because obviously traditionally institutional investors couldn't do it because of the regulations. No pension fund could do it. But now there are structures evolving which allows to get all those financial products on the blockchain.
Yeah. But we're also seeing that with normal currencies. Yeah. So if you take US settlement coin, Baton, Axoni, those all are examples of that same work being done around the currencies we use today, let alone tokens as well. So that whole space is a huge growth area for this technology.
Okay. We've got time for one final question. Oh, we've got 2 questions, but
Hi, this is Frida from 11K Consulting. So 2 questions. So my first question is, which will be the next killer app in blockchain technology, do you think? And my second question is, how do you think the blockchain
sorry, lost the mic. Sorry. So first question is killer app. Yeah. We'd all like to know that.
And the second question is, how do you think the blockchain technology is going to impact the public relations and communications industry in the foreseeable future?
Okay. Killer app.
I think it will be a combination of cross-border trade and payments and KYC.
Okay. Hello?
Process efficiency, but that will be the silence one. The fashion one probably has to do a lot with consumer-to-consumer economy, share economy.
Okay.
I think, and it's more that I'm hoping that's happening, the killer applications that allow to trade all those coins easily on your smartphone.
Okay. Now the communications industry, blockchain, how will that affect communications?
Well, I think the impact of being able to share data securely is clearly going to have an impact on communication, full stop, particularly as you grow the inclusion by mobile and other channels. So there will certainly be a huge impact in that space. What you will see is blockchain being used a lot, and we're already seeing it for things like voting, to stop fraud and to ensure truth is established. So yeah, there's going to be a significant amount of public sector and communication related solutions coming to market that use blockchain and its underpinnings. But you know, no more so than there's also going to be as many probably coming without blockchain as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's sweeping changes in communications. You have as a career journalist, the time of things I've seen in my career, unimaginable. It really is.
In that sense, I would focus on the transparency of goods, so as an enabler of that communication. So for me, it's going to be very important that now we really can have full transparency of the supply chain in that space for consumers. So we will have companies will have to articulate, let's say, that social responsibility, that management.
Yes. Yeah. Consumers can see where the goods come from. They can see who's produced them. They possibly see how much they've been paid for.
The pictures even of the lands or the space of the manufacturer, of the workers.
Yes.
Agree.
Yeah.
And going on that bit about the app, I'm not so sure it's actually going to be the app that's going to be the big game changer. But I think what you are going to see as a game changer is different industries for the first time working together to bring new products to market that have never been done before. And I think it will be those that will be the game changer for the consumer. And yes, they will be delivered by app, but I don't know what they look like yet, but we're working on it.
Final word to you.
So communication industry, I think, will hugely change because now the blockchain token economy allows to reward very small contributions through a token reward system. That means that anybody that produces an information that is interesting can, in a way, be rewarded through a token model which was totally unthinkable up to now. And I think we are just really very much at the beginning of this. We don't know really how to handle that. But in the end, it's going to be that it's a much fairer, democratized, decentralized process whereby the production of interesting information will be much more rewarded appropriately and hopefully also leading kind of to a fairer way of distribution of wealth in the communication industry.
So potentially, a new media business model that most of the major media players have been struggling with since the introduction of the internet.
I mean, we're looking at really different business models, which says, come to my communication platform or network, because if you give me the information, you get reward back, which will participate at the success of the information in some kind of, open system.
Yeah, and that drives inclusion as well, espresso. And we're also seeing in DLT already a number of reputation systems being developed off the back of that to reward people for doing good work and keep getting the bad guys out of the way and the people that want to do good work being rewarded with future work. So these reputation systems, because we can prove consensus and truth, allow us to basically, hopefully, encourage people to create a meritocracy where it doesn't exist.
Tremendous. Well, look, I'm afraid we have to leave it there. We are out of time. An extraordinary discussion, and there's so much more we can talk about. This is an issue we'll be following very closely at Asia House, and I'm sure all of you will be too. The pace of change is rapid. The potential for change is dramatic. So we're very grateful to you all for sharing your insights with me. So please join me in thanking our panelists, Barry Child, Pilar Santamaria, Wolfgang Richter. Thank you again to Mary Starks for being here and for opening proceedings and for your insights. Thank you all for being here. Please join us for a cup of coffee, and if you have any more questions for the panelists, please feel free to ask them. Thanks very much.